Frederick Douglass and the Abolitionist movement. Slavery flourished for almost 100 years after our nation received its independence. This is a frightening past that has been for so long a way of our lives. The fight that was needed to end this was a long and hard struggle. One of the groups of people that deserve the most appreciation and honor for bringing about the change that was needed are those that used not violence and hatred, but art and their form of expression to steer others to act. One of these people is Frederick Douglass. Him and others like him began the abolitionist movement. Now what was the abolitionist movement? The abolitionist movement began in the 1830s, and the main goal of it was to see to an end of slavery and segregation in the United States of America. Our Constitution guarantees everyone the right to life, liberty, and property. Abolitionists knew that this was not the case in the current United States of America. Slavery violates all of these, the right to life, liberty, and property. Slaves had no freedom. They weren't allowed to own property. What is a life tied down in shackles? So who was Frederick Douglass? Frederick Douglass was a former African American slave that taught himself to read and write and later escaped to fight the war against slavery himself. His writings and speeches reflect the ideas and goals of abolitionists. Frederick Douglass began an abolitionist newspaper called the North Star. Its motto was, "Right is of no sex, truth is of no color, God is the Father of us all, and we are all brethren." These lines reflect his ideas on equality and that of many abolitionists. He wanted a nation where everyone, including blacks and whites, men and women, were equal. At this time, however, the women's rights issue wasn't the main issue at hand. People wanted to deal with slavery first. While not everyone wanted complete equality, those that had similar ideas to Douglass's did want to see everyone free and equal. The motto of the North Star explains the goals of the movement. The first article of the North Star was published in 1847. In this article, Douglass says that the goal of this newspaper is to direct a paper by blacks to advocate liberty. Douglass wanted for all those that experienced the horrors of slavery, such as himself, to rise and speak up. He wanted this newspaper to be a sort of mouthpiece for African Americans to fight for their rights. Douglass presents the goals of the movement in this article as well. He says that it is their duty to fight and achieve liberty in the country. The North Star was only one aspect of Douglass's writing that had such a huge impact on the abolitionist movement and the fight against slavery. The paper was circulated to more than 4,000 readers in the U.S., Europe, and the West Indies, as PBS.org explains. Douglass wrote an autobiography named Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. In this, he recalls many stories of his past life under slavery. It was a highly influential piece of literature. His words hold persuasive power, as can be noted from the quotes. He not only talked about the horrors faced by slaves in order to make the readers feel pity and sorrow for these blacks, but also appealed to the American values that were so important to many whites, especially Northerners. This book surely moved many white men and women to take action against slavery. Frederick Douglass's works of literature show the values of both the Southern whites who held slaves, as well as his and his supporters. The descriptions that his book and paper illustrate show that slaveholders at many times had no respect for their slaves and treated them as property. This shows that they did not value freedom and equality, and in fact, many took pleasure in the feeling of ownership that they had. Douglass, however, says that these blacks must work with whites and calls them his friends. While we can see that he values equality, we can also tell that he values respect and kindness as well. Douglass also gave many powerful speeches, one during a 4th of July celebration. It sought to show his audience that the celebration of the 4th of July was a sort of mockery towards him and other African Americans. This speech provoked a discussion that lasted for months after he delivered it. Noted here are other abolitionists whose efforts cannot be ignored either. The efforts of Douglass and many other abolitionists like him ultimately did lead to the change that was needed. Here is a timeline of events that led to the end of slavery.